So it seems like minimalism is trending again. Emma Chamberlain decluttered her closet. Under consumption core is the new trend. De-influencing took the internet by storm last year. As a millennial who went through minimalism the first time in 2015 after this documentary came out and Marie Kondo got us all asking if it sparks joy, it got me wondering, is minimalism trending again? So today I'm going to share all the rules, habits, and mistakes you may be making with minimalism because they don't actually work, and what you can do instead. Coming from someone who was a full-blown minimalist for over 3 years, I had to kind of take myself out of some of these rules and realize that they just didn't work for me. Nowadays, I like to live a lifestyle that's a little bit more minimalist-ish, where I like to take what really works about minimalism and leave what doesn't. I even made a video all about it called The Minimalist Rules That Actually Work. That approach has really worked a lot better for me. I even wrote a journal all about it. If you want to check it out and support me, I'll leave a link in the description for you. The first rule of minimalism that does not work is if you haven't used it in 6 months, then simply get rid of it. I used to be so ruthless with this rule. If I didn't use something in 6 months to a year, it had to go out of my life, smell you later. But I found over time that this didn't really work. It would end up making life a lot more difficult and a lot more expensive because I had to go out and rebuy a lot of things. The problem with this rule is that it makes a lot of assumptions. Life is not really that predictable. So if you are decluttering, instead of just using time as the barometer to decide whether or not it stays or goes, ask other questions like, why did I purchase this in the first place? Why don't I use it now? And what are some potential future plans for it that are actually realistic? Is there a genuine scenario where you'll probably end up using this thing or needing it down the road? Yes, this might not apply to, your egg slicer, but if it's a piece of clothing and in terms of weight fluctuations, or if you plan to have kids, it does depend on the item for sure. But always remember that you can utilize storage and it's okay to hold on to things if you can see a proper use for them down the line. But sometimes you can even get what I like to call declutter drunk, where you're getting kind of that similar dopamine hit that you used to get from shopping from decluttering itself. So try not to let that rush and that satisfaction cloud your judgment. I think it's more important to think practically about an item and how it can actually fit into your life in a useful way. Rule number 2 is you can only have a certain amount of items. You know the whole rule of, a capsule wardrobe should only have 30 items. You only need 2 pairs of jeans. You only need 1 bag. One hard truth that I had to learn is that minimalism is not a numbers game. If you can fit your whole life into a backpack, good for you, but not everybody can. Everybody's life and situation is completely different. Whether you're single, whether you have a family, and you have pets or kids, your needs and the amount of things that you need to own in order to live your life functionally and practically is going to be different for everybody. When it comes to wardrobes, some people have hobbies that require owning a lot of things or a lot of gear, or you might live in a place that has 4 seasons and changing climates, or you simply might like fashions or other hobbies that kind of necessitates you owning a little bit more of those items. It's really about how these items serve you in your life. I think minimalism can be used as a tool to help prevent and get rid of overwhelm in your life. It helps get rid of the clutter, but if you enjoy it or actually use it or you need it, then it's not clutter. So focus on how these things integrate into your life and your relationship to them, rather than just setting some random arbitrary numbers so that you can flex to some stranger on the internet about how much you do or do not own. The whole numbers game with minimalism was always really strange to me, and as soon as I let that go, I can tell you how much easier life got, especially when it came to my relationship with my possessions. Number 3 is less of a rule and more of a mistake that I see frequently when people start dabbling in minimalism, and it's that they end up making it their whole personality. I had to learn the hard way that minimalism can be used as a tool. It's a set of values and systems that you can use in your life to make it easier, to make it less overwhelming, to help you buy less but better, make better, more informed and intentional decisions and purchases in your life. It's a tool. When you make it your entire personality and label yourself as a minimalist, it can really lead you into an identity crisis, because when you associate that label with your identity, anytime you act outside of that or do anything that kind of feels in conflict with that identity, it can be really difficult. It can kind of send you into a spiral. And then you feel like you have to put yourself through a lot of this justification and whatever. It can turn into an existential crisis. And I feel like it can really trap you and box you into things that you may not necessarily want to be boxed into because of external expectations and assumptions that other people make about what all that means. That's why when I started leaning into more of a minimalist-ish way of living and turning it into a set of values and reframing it as I'm the type of person who tries to minimize impulse buying and slows things down before they buy. I'm the type of person who likes to save money and values a clutter-free space. So instead of kind of saying like I'm becoming a minimalist or I'm going minimalist, when I made minimalism my entire personality, I just felt so boxed in, and I feel like I had to be beholden to a lot of the stereotypes that people assume minimalists to be. And I didn't like it. It didn't feel good. So fair warning. Next is feeling like you need to declutter everything all in one weekend. I think the minimalists made this really popular with their packing party method, where basically what they did was pack up every single thing that they own and only took out things as they needed it over time. And whatever was still left in the box after a certain period of time, I think it was like a month or something like that, then they decided that they could get rid of that, and whatever they kept was everything they truly needed. If that works for you, I think that's great, but for most people, that's not really realistic or possible. And the problem with rushing into decluttering and kind of doing it as a response to feeling really overwhelmed by your stuff and just being really frustrated and kind of saying like, I gotta get rid of everything, it can really lead you to making rash decisions that probably aren't really all that well thought over and can just lead to a lot of regrets later on down the line. So what I recommend instead is to declutter in phases. Start small, focus on one area at a time, and it can be something as small as your purse or your glove box. You don't have to tackle entire rooms or your entire home all in one day or one weekend or even in 1 week. Take your time, schedule it in, where you can slowly see progress over time and do your declutters with a lot of clarity. And if you do it slowly over time, I think it also helps create that habit of decluttering and using it as a maintenance tool where you go through your things, you audit them regularly, and you really learn over time what you truly need and value versus what you don't. This way you make decluttering a habit and a tool in your life rather than something that you do impulsively on a whim as a response to overwhelm and frustration. I just think you're gonna make a lot of mistakes if you do it that way. Next is that if it doesn't spark joy, then get rid of it. I love the spark joy rule. I find it very, very helpful, but my kitchen spatula doesn't spark joy, but I need it. Or keeping my paperwork for taxes is not thrilling, but I need it. Simply going by the spark joy rule is kind of incomplete. There's other questions you need to ask if you are planning on decluttering and going through your things. Spark joy being one of them, and it's a very simple question to ask, but it's also really important to think about whether or not the thing is meaningful, useful, if it adds value to your life, or if it's simply a functional and utilitarian need. Never have backups or duplicates. Only own exactly what you need in the exact amounts, down to your tube of toothpaste. Like, what? I'm telling you, I have seen videos like that. I have seen that advice given out. Have some backups, okay? It's not like your pantry needs to look like a Costco, but having a few backups, a few duplicates of things is probably more practical than it is anything else. I think having too many duplicates can kind of play into the feeling of scarcity or not having enough. So I think there is a nice balance, but having a few backups here and there of the things you actually use, you actually need, you actually wear and like, I think that's totally fine. I think that is probably smarter than anything else because you can't always go out and replace something right away when you need it. Having some backups here and there, I think, is more practical than anything else. Next is thinking that you need to buy the cheapest thing possible. I think there is a huge difference between being frugal and being cheap, and exploring minimalism definitely doesn't mean that you suddenly become cheap or that you never spend money ever again. Instead, you might find yourself spending more money on things that are of higher quality and that are built to last. Inevitably, those things are the things that cost a little bit more money up front. I think the true key to spending intentionally and getting the most out of your money is cost per use. If you go and spend $5 on some cheap gadget that you need, but it breaks after one use, then that's $5 down the drain, as opposed to spending $15 on something that you can use over and over and over again. Of course, that cost was a little bit more expensive up front, but the cost per use that you pay goes down every time you get use out of that item. That's where the true value for your money comes from, and I think is the key to buying less but better items that serve you in your life. I think the true spirit of minimalism is not found in buying the least or buying the cheapest thing. And that's what I think a lot of people do end up getting wrong. Next is thinking that you can't be a minimalist and have hobbies or collections. I don't know what this thing is with like internet minimalism and everyone being okay with having a large book collection, but not anything else like records, clothing, toys, or whatever other interest or hobbies people have. I don't think minimalism is about erasing your entire personality, getting rid of your whole wardrobe to wear the Steve Jobs black t-shirt and jeans uniform, and that way you're an official minimalist. If your hobbies or collections or the things that you love to do or buy brings you true joy, and I'm talking real authentic joy, so you don't feel overwhelmed, you can really escape into that hobby, it makes you feel good, and it doesn't overwhelm you financially or in your space, then I think it's a perfectly reasonable thing to own and spend your money on. So I think it's important to keep your hobbies and your interests aligned with your values. If the things that you do own start to feel overwhelming or like clutter, or they're negatively impacting your life in some way, then that's an opportunity to reevaluate that. But if it's just genuine, fun, cute, exciting, makes you happy, go for it. Next is thinking that you need to declutter once and then you're done. You can do one big power declutter and be one and done for a while, but things do still find a way to come back into your life. So it's important to build upon that habit and do it regularly. Thinking about whether or not something brings value into your life, thinking about if you're actually going to use it, or being real with yourself and saying, am I holding on to this for some just in case scenario that will never actually happen? It's important to always be questioning those things in your life if you want to maintain the new environment and habits that you've adopted. And finally, it's that you should get rid of all sentimental items. I hate this rule. This rule annoys me so much, and I can't tell you how many times I have seen people say, oh, just take a picture of this sentimental item, and then you have this memory of it, and then it doesn't actually take up the space. If that works for you, I think that's amazing, but for a lot of people, it's just not gonna cut it. I think sentimental items get a really bad rap and are really undervalued in the whole minimalist mindset and space. And I've seen it framed as a form of holding on and being unable to let go. And it's like this, valiant, noble thing to let go of a sentimental item. You don't have to do that. Okay, please. I do agree that if everything is sentimental and if everything kind of holds that sentimental value, but it's overwhelming your space, then that can be another issue. But holding on to a few sentimental things here and there, things that spark memories, make you feel a certain way, or represent something meaningful to you, please keep it. Don't feel like you need to declutter that. Don't feel like you need to change your relationship to it or be forced to get rid of it. Just because you're getting into minimalism doesn't mean that you need to get rid of your entire personality and get rid of everything in your life that represents something meaningful to you. I think that's actually the opposite of what minimalism is supposed to help people achieve. So hold on to your sentimental items, hold on to your things that have meaning, display them in your home, wear them in your closet, or if you can't wear them, don't wear them. But every time you pull them out and it sparks meaning, it sparks joy, it sparks emotion in you, I say keep it. So at the end of the day, I think minimalism and using it as a tool to improve your life is not really about following some arbitrary rule book. I think it's really about creating your own rules and habits where you take what works for you and simply leave what doesn't. Not every minimalist rule is for everybody, and I think that's okay. So don't be afraid to bend the rules or even break them if you are deciding to explore minimalism or underconsumption or any of that into your life this year. So let me know in the comments below which minimalist rules you follow and which ones you don't. And if you want to see the minimalist rules and habits that actually work, that I actually follow, you can check out this video right here. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you next Sunday. Thanks for watching. Bye.